Hi there, I'm Trevor Coote, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we are joined by Darren Jacklin. Darren started out as a corporate trainer and mentor and now invests in companies through his collective investment portfolio, Grandeur Capital Corp. Grandeur manages a portfolio of businesses across diversified industries. Darren is an author, philanthropist, and renowned speaker, sharing his message with audiences all over the world. I hope you enjoy this episode. Sir Darren Jacklin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Trevor, I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, no, it's good to have you. I'm excited to. I know that your story has a lot to add. Your life story has a lot to add to kind of the business content that I've that I've tried to stick to in the podcast, and I'm looking forward to you kind of sprinkling in all of that
Sure.
life journey that is added to your business conversation and your business journey. But as I do with everyone, I just want to know what your introduction to business was. Was it later in life? Were you influenced earlier by other people? What did that kind of introduction to entrepreneurship look like for you?
Great question. So I failed grade 1 of public school in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada, and was misdiagnosed with a learning disability and a reading disability. So I got introduced to business at age 7, where I created my first little business called Rent a Kid. And I would go out and cut grass, shovel sidewalks, and deliver the Regina Leader Post newspaper 6 days a week in my neighborhood in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada. So I got introduced to business by going out and knocking on a lot of doors in my residential neighborhood in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada. And what I realized was, because I didn't have the self-confidence, I couldn't look people in the eyes as this young little shy little kid. But what I realized that whatever I lack in skill, I make it up in numbers. So I used to play these games as a kid with my Rent-A-Kid business where I'd put secretly Canadian pennies in my left pocket. And when I was scared of rejection and oh my gosh, I don't want people to reject me and slam doors on me and tell me to go away and get off their property, I would hide these Canadian pennies in my left pocket, 20 Canadian pennies. And every time I'd go knock on a door and ring a doorbell and they'd answer, I'd do my little spiel with them. Then I'd transfer the penny to the right pocket, and I'd play these games all the time. So I got introduced at a very young age on learning how to overcome adversities and challenges and rejection and stuff. And then as I got into 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age, between knocking on doors, doing trade shows, doing farmers markets, because I just really wanted to solve problems and serve people. So I went a different way, but I tell you, anytime you can do cold calling, I've made over 100,000 cold calls. I used to make 400 cold calls a day, 2,000 cold calls a week over a 5-year period. So if you can make cold calls, if you can knock on doors, if you can go out there and do trade shows or conferences or workshops where you're meeting the public and you're getting feedback and you're having conversations, it's great training development.
A little bit harder now because we don't have pennies anymore in Canada. You'd have to use nickels.
Yeah, nickels. That's nickels or dimes. Yeah. And the thing is today is that one of the things to understand, what I always share with people, is if we look at human beings, right, no matter where we are on the planet, or if we look at social media, what are we? All we are is a network of conversations, right? And so human beings live through a network of conversations, and opportunities are created through conversations. So what's exciting about this is that when I always say to people, if you want to get into business, talk to lots and lots of people. And now sometimes people say, well, somebody's going to steal my idea. I've got this invention or this great next new mousetrap. Well, guess what? In the world today, if you can be copied, you will be copied. It's about speed to market, speed to execution. In North America, we call R&D research and development. In Asia, they call it rip off and duplicate. We live in a globalized world today, right? And so the key thing is that nobody's going to have the hustle. Nobody's going to have the grind. Nobody's going to have the passion that you have. And the key thing is work ethic, getting up early, going to bed late, working out, taking care of your mental health, drinking lots of water, getting proper sleep care. That's so important. But also what I learned from my life is having mentors and coaches and people around me that I can collaborate with is so important. That's one of the biggest mistakes I made throughout my life, was doing life by myself as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and not going to people who had more history and experience than me. Okay. Another thing is get around the people who don't just have the university or college degrees, who've got the MBAs and the PhDs. They're smart people, they're educated people, but a lot of these people don't know how to run a lemonade stand. right? Because they have no practical experience. They're great at studying stuff and researching, but you want people who've been there in the trenches, who've done it, who've made the mistakes, who've had the screw ups, who've had the setbacks, who've had the failures, who've had to go out there and raise money or collect a check. That's so different, having practical experience versus someone who's got the academia experience. It's like night and day experience. So you got to choose your mentors wisely, because I've made the mistakes where I went to people and got the wrong information at the wrong time and had to pay a lot of money to course correct those mistakes. So I know from practical experience of, blowing through hundreds of thousands of dollars in mistakes, of what to do and what not to do now. And that's what life teaches over time. I'm almost 52 years of age now. So I've learned now through what to do and what not to do in terms of standard operating procedures, with the structure, with the systems, with the processes. And anything that you want to do today in business, somebody's already created the structure, the systems and processes. Now you just have to model what they do, implement them, build yourself a team. And then there's day-to-day operational things that you got to do. But, business is not easy. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It's a sport. You gotta put in the long, hard hours. There's no guarantees, right? But the rewards are great too. If you can endure the peaks and the valleys, the frustrations, the disappointments at times, because you're going to get hugged and slugged. You're going to get kissed and kicked. You're going to get supported and challenged. And there's going to be a period of your time as a business owner where you're going to be misunderstood. Your friends and family, people who love and care about you, are going to misunderstand you because they've known you as that person, that human being who's been at that job for many years or done things. So you're going to be misunderstood for a period of time when you're starting a new career or a new business path, and you're in that startup mode where you're out there hustling and grinding and it's scary and all that stuff. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. That misunderstanding is where you got to keep persevering into massive, consistent action. And that's the key thing, is massive, consistent action over a sustained period of time.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. And I look at myself as what was me is that I was willing to make the phone calls and be uncomfortable. And you're going to be uncomfortable. Being a business owner is not being comfortable. Being an entrepreneur is not being comfortable. That's why it's not for everybody. People ask me all the time, they go, hey, do you think I should be a business owner? Well, let me ask you a few questions. I'm like, what? I said, well, let me ask you some qualifying questions, and we'll determine by how you answer the questions. And based on the feedback you give me and how your body's feeling, whether it's right for you or not. Because it's not for everybody.
Yeah. I always share the story in university. I started in commerce for my undergrad degree at the University of Saskatchewan. And I failed an entrepreneur self-assessment, whether I would be a good entrepreneur or not in that first year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I failed it. So I bailed on the business school, and I went into kinesiology, went into sciences.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the thing is I've seen many people who went to university and college, and they get out and they want to create, and they got a brilliant business plan, and they're brilliant at what they can do, but they don't execute. They get stuck in the process, but not execution.
Yeah. And I mean, there's people guilty of that in a lot of different disciplines, for sure. Great ideas, great plan, but and it comes down to what you were talking about when you were 7. That the moving pennies from one side to the other, that fear of rejection, that anxiety of approaching people, and this in this world with social media, it seems there's more and more of that. So I do want to get to the point you kind of talked about these larger mistakes, these more financially costly mistakes. And you hit on some really good points, the kind of the comparison of the academia versus the action, the tangible action, the enterprise aspect of business. And that's come up, that's a theme, I would say, in the podcast with guests is that, business itself is a really expensive learning lesson, right? Like we learn so much just by doing and making those mistakes and figuring it out as we go, regardless of the kind of the plan and the strategy that you have before you go in.
Absolutely.
So let's fast forward a little bit from when you were 7 and your first kind of entrepreneurial, figuring out that you've got an entrepreneurial spirit. What was your first business, your first actual business aside from hire a kid?
So I built a corporate training business back in 1995 in Vernon, British Columbia, Canada. And I had that over 25 years. I ended up training, developing people in 50 countries on 4 continents, and trained and developed over 1 million people. I had 157 of the Fortune 500 companies as paying clients who wrote checks to pay me to come in and do corporate training seminars. And I used to travel about 276 days a year globally around the planet. Super elite on Star Alliance, Air Canada, Aeroplan, always right in the front of the plane. But I earned it, with being on the road as a road warrior. But that was my first real business. But I got started through Toastmasters International, Trevor, and Dale Carnegie training back in the early 1990s because I had low self-confidence. I didn't have strong communication skills. So I got into Toastmasters and Dale Carnegie to improve my self-confidence and the belief in myself. And I had people that are in Toastmasters and Dale Carnegie at the time who believed more in me than I believed in myself. And what I was doing as a day job, I was a telemarketer for Maclean's magazine. So I'd work 5 to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, home intrusion hours. And I used to call people during their dinner time and home intrusion hours. We call it 5 to 9. And I would call them on outbound phone calls, making 400 cold calls a day, selling magazine subscriptions all across Canada, coast to coast, depending on the time zones. And so I did that for 7 months. And after 7 months, my boss came to me and said, Darren, this is a dead end road. You can't go any further. You're the number one telemarketer in Canada from Maclean's magazine. And he's like, what should I do? And he goes, you need to give your 2-week notice. And you need to go and build a corporate training business because you've got all the skills now on how to build a corporate training business. You're getting trained through Dale Carnegie and Toastmasters. Now you know how to make sales phone calls. You know how to deal with a 98% rejection rate because that's what I was facing, a 98% rejection rate, 2% conversion rate selling magazine subscriptions coast to coast on the phone. And so what happened was I was scared, terrified, didn't know how I was going to pay my rent on time and my bills. And I went from living paycheck to paycheck to living panic to panic. Right. So I was paycheck to paycheck. And then I went to create my first business and I was living panic to panic. Okay. And I lived panic to panic for a number of years. I was so financially broke at times. I wore the same high school suit for the first 10 years of my corporate training career, traveling all over North America, making 400 cold calls a day, 2,000 cold calls a week, selling corporate training seminars to human resources departments. And I started in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, Canada with Sunright, Cal Tire, Tocal Industries, Riverside Forest Products. Then I would expand into, Vancouver with the insurance companies and with the real estate companies. And the first company that ever hired me, that actually ever wrote me a check, was Investors Group Financial Services.
Oh, interesting.
They were the first company to ever hire me as a corporate trainer. Second company was Century 21 Real Estate, Bill Hubbard, who I'm still in contact with this day, 30 plus years later. And Perry, I just spoke to last year, and so these are the first two companies, real estate and financial services. And so then I really dove deep over the years into financial services, real estate, insurance companies, mortgage companies all across the world. And then some of the network marketing companies I got involved with. But, and I just took massive, consistent action. And there was many days I wanted to quit, days I was stressed out, not knowing how I was going to financially pay my bills. It even got to a point where I got my car repossessed. I got an R9 credit rating, which most people in North America don't know what an R9 credit rating is. But as a metric, as a score through Equifax and TransUnion Credit, an R9 credit rating is the worst possible credit score you can get. So in my 30s, I knew what it was like to be panic to panic getting an R9 credit rating. So I went from there to being a multimillionaire today. But it's interesting because I know what to do and what not to do. Like when you're upside down, financially living panic to panic, and you're scared, terrified, you're going to get evicted, everything's going to get frozen, you're going to write another NSF check, all this stuff. So I've been through those dark days. I had a 7-year period of my life where it was very, very dark, like depressed, suicidal, scared to death every freaking day. But I had this stubbornness inside of myself that I wasn't going to quit because I didn't want other people to say, I told you so. Because I had many critics. Trevor, I had many critics and many said, you're going to start a corporate training business. You don't have an MBA. You don't have a PhD. I'm like, well, I'll freaking prove you wrong. I'll outwork you. I'll make more phone calls. I'll knock on more doors. I'll do mobile business proposals. I'll get standing ovations. I'll get high elevations. So in the beginning, it was kind of like to prove other people wrong. And I did that out of ego and out of pride and aggressive in my early days. I was a pretty aggressive human being in my 30s. Like I got cease and desist orders. I was put on do not call list. Like I was unstoppable, and I had no integrity. I had no freaking integrity.
You
And
you must have seen an opportunity for it to pay off though. Like I get the, you know, the tenacity based on wanting to prove people wrong, wanting to show the world that you can succeed, and I get that being a motivating factor. There's no question. But a part of you must have thought or been able to visualize this is going to work, because otherwise you're just running into a dead end.
I realized it would, because I knew that we were a network of conversations, and I knew if I talked to enough people, whatever I lacked in my skills, I would make it up in numbers. But at the same time, I had that, how am I going to pay my bills? And then I had the negative self-talk is I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough because of childhood trauma, right? So that going on. And then I had friends and family who said, when are you going to get a real job? So I had a lot of critics on the outside, and I had this internal drive to prove something for myself, that I'm good enough, I'm smart enough. I used to go dumpster diving, and I'd go in behind Staples and Office Depot at nighttime into their dumpsters, recycling bins and garbage stores. And I used to take out a box and say like Microsoft on it, or Kellogg's Corn Flakes, or Coca-Cola. And I used to take my scissors and X-Acto knife, I used to cut them out, and I used to put them on my walls as vision boards. And then it would take a few days or a few weeks, and I'd write out 200 reasons of benefits of why I'm smart enough, good enough, worthy enough, and deserving enough. Start at number 200 and count down, so I could build up my confidence in my belief system, so that when I made that phone call to that HR manager, that regional vice president of that company, that I was so certain that I was going to get the corporate training contract. And I believe that whoever had the most certainty would win. So I was so determined that I had 200 benefits of reasons of why I'm smart enough, good enough, worthy enough. So I was unstoppable. And I'd be on airplanes, I'd be in hotel lounges, and I'd be writing down reasons why I'm smart enough, good enough all the time to all these corporations on all these vision boards. And, and it built my belief system, my confidence. And so I always encourage people, like, listen, when you're going in to do a sales call, or you're going to meet somebody and you're kind of a little scared or unsure, write down what values, what's your unique value proposition? What are you bringing to provide in terms of value? How are you going to serve this client or this customer or this organization? How are you going to solve their problems? How are you going to serve them? How are you going to produce results? How are you going to make a difference? And that will give you a reassurance that, hey, man, I can do this. Because I was scared, because I'm going in there and, I go into sales calls early in my first business, and people say, like, so what's your background? I said, well, I have a degree in results. Isn't that what you're looking for? And people say, well, you're a little cocky, aren't you? I said, no, I'm certain. I'm confident. I'm here to produce results, because your time is money. And I'm here. And I'll share an interesting story. So for a number of years in my corporate training, I was making $200 a day plus my travel expenses. And I got a per diem for my living out allowance. And one day I'm in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. And a buddy of mine invites me to this mastermind group of all these successful business entrepreneurs from across the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, Canada. And my buddy's like dragging me out, because I don't want to go. Like, I need to get on the phone. I need to make phone calls, because I need to make money, right? Because I'm desperate, panic to panic. And he's like, you need to come to this event. I said, listen, I don't have I can't afford the membership to this group. These people are way above me. I'm putting everybody on a pedestal. I'm putting myself in the pit, self-sabotaging through my negative self-talk in the beginning days. So I go to this event, and towards the end of the mastermind, after a few hours, they have what they call a hot seat, Trevor. And they take one of the business owners or entrepreneurs in the room, and they put them up in front of the room in the hot seat, and then they basically rip them apart. What's working, what's not working in their life, and they give them constructive feedback, and they coach and mentor them. And whether it's around finances, it's around their family, it's around relationship with their kids, it's around sales, marketing, whatever it is, around hiring people, there's some different topic. So
sounds uncomfortable.
Oh, it's totally terrifying, right? So my buddy goes, you're going up there. I said, I'm not going up there. I'm just a spectator. I'm just a guest. Like, I'm not part of this group. Okay. These people are way more experienced and successful than me. I'm wasting everybody's time getting in front of the room. And he's like, no, you're going up. I said, I'm not going up. Let's understand. It's non-negotiable. I'm not going up. So he puts up his hand. He says, Darren Jacklin's going up. I'm like, no, I'm not. And he goes, no. So then the group starts telling me to go up, and the guy says, listen, are you going to shut up, or are you going to stop arguing for your limitations? And so I don't want to waste everybody's time in this group. There's people with much more bigger problems than me. So anyways, eventually the group dynamics gets me to the front of the room. I'm totally out of my comfort zone, totally naked, totally exposed. Guy starts asking me questions about what I do. I'm a corporate trainer, traveling across North America. How much you make a day? $200 a day, right? All this stuff. And he goes, why do you only charge $200 a day? I said, well, my target is to get to $500 a day. Like that's a home run for me. $500 a day doing corporate training for a full day of seminar. That's worth it. He's like, you see, you'll fly from Vancouver to New York City for $200 to do a day of training and all the preparation, and then a day there and a day to get back. He says, you can get more money being a greeter at Walmart. But I was committed to the cause of making a difference doing the corporate training because I loved it. And he said to me, he says, are you open to some feedback? I said, sure. And he says, I want you to start charging $10,000 a day for a corporate training seminar. I said, you got to be kidding me, man. Like I'm getting high rejection right now at $200 a day. You up it to 10 grand. It doesn't make any sense. You obviously don't know my industry. You've not done any research. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not qualified to give me that advice because you have no practical experience. And he goes, are you open to the challenge? I said, absolutely not. I'm not coachable here because you don't know what you're talking about. He goes, listen, I'm going to challenge you as you right now. If you want to come back to this mastermind group, you start asking for $10,000. And I said, no. And he goes, you're going to ask. I said, okay, fine. I'll do it. So anyways, 2 days later, Trevor, I get a phone call here in North America from a big oil and gas company who I'd done work with 18 months prior. Guy calls me up, senior vice president. He goes, hi, can I talk to Darren Jacklin? Yep. This is so-and-so calling. Yep. He said, we're doing a quarterly offsite in the Canadian Rocky Mountains in Golden, British Columbia, Canada at the Quantum Leaps Lodge. And he said, would you be willing to come in and do a quarterly offsite for a day of corporate training with my top senior staff? I'm like, sure. He goes, how much is it for a day of corporate training? Oh, and I said, $10,000. And the guy goes, okay, fine, done. My executives will call you back within 90 minutes with a FedEx tracking number. We'll send you a 50% deposit. You'll have it within 24 hours. And in 4 months from now, when you come and do the corporate training seminar, we'll give you the other 50% deposit. Something you got to be kidding me. Okay, so now I owe money. I'm in financial debt. I owe money. Okay, I'm out of integrity. I owe people money. So I'm thinking, man, I'm going to get $5,000 in the next 24 hours. Like my bank has never seen me cash a check for $5,000 at once before. Right? So I'm freaking pumped. So I'm tracking FedEx.com, tracking the FedEx package to make sure this is legit. This is really going to work. And sure enough, it's en route to me through the FedEx tracking. And so I start making phone calls. People say, hey, listen, I'm going to catch up. I owe you some money. When can I pop by? I owe you a couple $100. Boom, 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 boom. So anyways, next day FedEx arrives. I run out to see the FedEx driver. He's like kind of like freaked out because like I wanted to hug the FedEx driver because I'm so excited to get a check for $5,000. I got bills to pay and taxes to pay. So I grab the check, I get in, I go to the bank, walk into the bank, and there's a whole, as I unpack this story, there's a lot of valuable lessons for people listening to this. They'll remember this story for the rest of their lives. It's very powerful. So as I go to the bank, walk in there, and I go into the bank, and the lady looks at me, she goes, is there anything else I can help you with? I said, yeah, I just need to withdraw the $5,000. She goes, well, Mr. Jacklin, she goes, we have to put a 5-day business hold on your check.
Right.
Because, and I'm like, well, I can't afford a 5-day business hold on my check. I need the cash today. I got people I just gave my word to. I got to pay the bills. She's like, sorry, Mr. Jacklin. I said, I need to speak to the bank manager, whoever's in charge of supervisor. Supervisor comes over, said, Mr. Jacklin, we've never cashed a check like this before. Yeah, we recognize this big oil and gas company. They're a well-known company in North America, but you've never cashed a check of this size before. And you've been in overdraft and you've bounced some checks before in the past. You don't have a good credit rating. So I'm like, oh gosh. So I leave the bank and I'm stressed out. Because I gave my word I was going to pop by and get caught up with expenses with people, right? So I got to make these phone calls, these uncomfortable conversations with people, telling them, and they're like, yeah, Darren, we knew you were full of BS. We knew that, we've done this before to us, and yeah, the check's in the mail. Yeah, you're going to pop by. Yeah, kumbaya. Let's drink the Kool-Aid, Darren, right? There's a lot of broken promises over the years with these people, right? So boom. So I wait 5 days, and then boom, finally get the money, go pay people up, and I'm, restore my integrity. 4 months later, I go to the Quantum Leaps Lodge in Golden, British Columbia, Canada. And I go there and I do a phenomenal day of corporate training, over-prepared. Like it's a gold medal for me that day. Phenomenal reviews from these executives. So at the end, the executives go whitewater rafting in the Canadian Rockies. And the senior executive, he says, let's go for a walk. So we go walking down the riverbank. He's smoking this guy's a chain smoker. And he's got my check for $5,000 here with his pack of cigarettes. And he's smoking one after another cigarette. Real redneck guy. And he says to me, he says, I got to ask you a question. 4 months ago when I called you up on the telephone, I asked you how much for a day of corporate training. Why'd you tell me $10,000? And Trevor, I'm freaked out thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's upset. He wants a financial refund. I've already spent the first 50%, the $5,000 on taxes and bills. The other $5,000's already spoken for overdue rents and some bills you got to get caught up on, right? Because I'm behind. I can't take this financial hit of $10K because I don't have the money. I can't do anything. I'm freaking, so I'm like a duck on top of the water, nice and proper. I'm paddling, really scared. And he goes, why did you say $10,000? So I looked at him, I took in a deep breath. I looked around the scenery in the Canadian Rockies here, and I said, you know what? I believe I did a phenomenal job of corporate training today. I over-delivered, I over-prepared. The executives are very impressed with what we did here at the quarterly offsite. Do you have any feedback for me? He looks at me, he goes, you got to learn when to keep your mouth shut. And I'm just like frozen like a deer. And he's like, when I called you up and I asked you how much for a day of corporate training, you told me $10,000. You should have asked me what was in my budget and what I was willing to pay you for a day of corporate training. Darren, I was willing to pay you $25,000
yeah,
for the day.
That's where you were going to go.
Plus your travel expenses, but you asked for $10,000. And he goes, by the way, if you would have asked for anything under $10,000, I would hung up the phone and you never would have heard from my organization ever again.
Which is why you're getting the rejections on the 200.
Yeah, he goes into his pocket. He takes the check for $5,000. He hands it to me. He goes, Darren, sometimes people believe more in you than you believe in yourself. It's time that you understand the value and your worth. 18 months ago, I saw you present at an oil and gas conference, and you were phenomenal. But you're not a $200 man. You're worth a lot more than that. And that just changed my belief system. Because he saw so much greater potential in me. And that's what a lot of business owners, they ask me all the time, Darren, how much do I charge for my services? I'm making this product or this service, or I'm a coach and I want to do coaching, or what do I charge? And so many business entrepreneurs and business owners get stuck on the price of what is a fair means of exchange or fair value in the marketplace. And it was a scary experience for me, but it taught me so many valuable life lessons.
Well, and I think it's a wonderful story, truly. And I think people get stuck on this value per hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because we live in an environment of hourly work. It's because people can't get past the fact that there's more value to them than just time, right? The expertise. And I actually wrote an article a while ago. I think it was titled something like "What's Your Worth," and I share the story of this a company that calls in a mechanic to fix this industrial machine.
Mm-hmm.
He comes in and he takes a hammer and he hits the machine and it starts working again. And he sends them a bill for $10,000. And they're like, it took you seconds to fix this. Like, it's not worth $10,000. And so he's resent the bill and he said, minutes of time, $5, knowing where to hit the machine, $9,995, right? And that's the value that you're bringing. Yeah.
So true. And that's what it was, where I've actually got up to $25,000 to $40,000 a day for corporate training. And I go in and people say, you're getting paid $40,000 plus first class travel for them? Yeah. And they go, yeah, but I make the company hundreds of thousands, if not a few millions of dollars over the next 90 days. So what they're paying me is chicken feed compared to what they're getting on the upside.
Yeah, there has to be value there, right? And it's the same, even people that are working an hourly wage job, there has to be value for the company in order to have them working that hourly wage job. There has to be a return for that effort, right? And there has to be some element of profit for the company. I want to go back a little bit, Darren, to your kind of your comparison of your early days, the tenacity that you were demonstrating, all of those hardships and your motivations. But really, like the story about going and cutting out the corporate logos and putting them on your vision board, and then writing out 200 kind of motivating pieces or 200 affirmations for yourself. That, like, you were really building yourself as much as you were building a business.
Yes.
What tell me a little bit more about what you were investing, what you were doing on the business side. Like, did you have actual metrics of this, like the phone calls you had, but this is how many clients I need to connect with in order to build that network that you've referred to a couple of times. We're all in this network. And so to build that branch out, tell me a little bit more, kind of comparing the building the business versus building yourself.
So I was very visionary. So I was never good at the structures and the systems and the processes, which I have people now with our group of companies that run the day-to-day operations as integrators that run the structure, systems, and processes. I primarily for many years built the airplane as I was flying it. That's what I was doing. Full transparency. I was just running, go.
I think the listener gets that.
Yeah.
I think from your stories, we're all there.
Yeah. And I think the thing is too, is that I was going city to city, corporation or organization to organization. And I never developed a long-term consistency plan with each company. Like I never signed 1-year contracts to go back. Some companies I did where I'd go back quarterly or twice a year and I'd do corporate training with them. But the thing was that I realized that I was always trading time for money, and I was only as good as my last corporate training seminar, right? So if something ever happened to me, because it was high risk for me because I was always on the road. But the thing was, when it came to cash flow, is my income was constantly up and down because I was booking flights 6, 12 months, a year in advance, and sometimes hotels and stuff like that. And then I get reimbursed my travel expenses. So what happened was money would be coming in. Yeah, I'd be making tens of thousands of dollars in a month, but that money is going back out to book flights and hotels, reinvestment all the time. And then I'd have to always keep, as Dr. Stephen Covey always talked about in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, sharpening the saw is one of the habits. I was continuously taking training development training programs, reinvesting financial dollars. I've spent over $1 million of my own money in training development programs, having coaches, mentors, mastermind programs, reading a lot of books, all that stuff all the time. So I'm constantly always ahead of my audience. And so it's constantly an investment. I remember going to Tony Robbins. The first time I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, I didn't have the money to fly to San Diego, California, or the money for the ticket for the tuition. So I sold my furniture and I got milk crates for a couple months. It was my furniture. And I sold my furniture to pay for the airfare and the travel expenses and the tuition to go to Tony Robbins seminar. And then when I went there, I thought, how can I have Tony and I work together? So then in 1995, I brought the Anthony Robbins Foundation to Canada and became a volunteer coordinator for 5 years in exchange to go to his programs because I knew proximity was power. So I was a volunteer coordinator for Canada for the first 5 years from 1995 to the year 2000, pioneered his foundation in Canada as a barter and trade in exchange for going to his corporate training or going to his workshops and seminars to meet people who were decision makers who then would buy my corporate training services.
Yep. And how did this evolve? I don't want to leap all the way to where you're at today, but I want to get there. So what was that progression? You've got multiple companies. They're all kind of integrated now.
Yes.
What was that progression after the corporate training to kind of evolve your business line and kind of the integration?
Tatiana came into my life. So I was in a course back in 2015, and it was a 7-month training development leadership course. And I realized that I had to start building teams of people, that I was the cog in the wheel, and that I was not getting any younger. I was getting older. And if I didn't start to duplicate what I was doing. So I met with many people over the years with my corporate training business, and they said, Darren, you can't duplicate what you're doing. Right? You're a one-man show. You can't. You're a corporate trainer. That's what you do. It's like Tony Robbins or Stephen Covey or any of these people. It's hard to duplicate them, right? And I have a unique skill set based on my past experiences, my childhood trauma, things like that in my life. And so what I realized was that I was getting paid a fee for service to go in and do these corporate training seminars, but I wasn't getting any equity. And what happened was I made these companies a lot of money. And I would, today I would have been worth well over $100 million today if I would have taken equity positions in some of these companies. And I've made millions of dollars, but I would never be at where I'd be at in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which I'll get to in the next decade. I believe I'll be worth over $100 million. I'm going to give it all away to our foundation for philanthropy. But the thing was that what I realized was I'm going out and mentoring and coaching and advising these people, making introductions and helping them grow and scale. And then I get a Christmas card at the end of the year. But yet the guy just exited and made $40 million in this company. I got a Christmas card with a $20 Starbucks card. I'm thinking, okay. So what I realized was years ago in 2015 when I met Tatiana was a high school teacher for 35 years, extremely smart woman, 3 academic degrees in the top universities in Canada. We became a powerful couple. And in the last 8 years of our life, my financial net worth has skyrocketed. Our portfolio of companies has grown internationally. We now have an international foundation. We've committed $100 million over the next 10 years to global philanthropy, building 100 schools around the world. We've had some big home runs in business, which we're grateful for. And we've had some losses and some hits as well, right? We've had, we had a hit last year, cost us $400,000 US by hiring the wrong person. Getting the wrong person in, it cost $400,000 for one person. Why? We didn't do our due diligence. We took something at face value of what it was. We didn't do a deep dive. This person was a bad actor and came with a lot of skeletons in the closet that we weren't aware of, and we got exposed to that risk and liability. And that was something that was big for us. So I always say to people, take the time to go through the discovery and the due diligence process and make sure that you do background checks, do research on people. Very, very important, because, it's cost us a lot of money from making some big mistakes on that kind of stuff.
And so in that particular case, it was not knowing what you were getting.
We saw
with
somebody
that individual.
Who was very professional person, presented himself very professional, very strong background, but we didn't. What tipped me off was when I flew down to meet with the person the one day, and I took him hiking, because hiking's a great filter, and I can explain, if you want, on hiking, how hiking's a great way to do due diligence on people and filter people. And some of my billionaire friends, that's what they do. They filter people through hiking. Not through golf, not through pickleball, but through hiking. Hiking has a unique thing of doing things. When I went down there, he went out of his vehicle to get gas one day and went in to use the restroom, and all these text messages were popping up on his screen of him owing all this money to all these different people.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought, oh my gosh, this is something I'm not aware of. And then these calls that he was doing do not disturb. And so it just so then I started talking to some people. And I realized, oh my gosh, this guy owes a lot of money to a lot of people, a lot of broken promises. That's why he's divorced. And, he's on the run. And then we realized that he had some past experiences years ago where he got in trouble with some stuff. And he was a bad actor, and he wasn't being accountable and responsible for his actions. He was running from that, and just meeting new people, going to different workshops and seminars and courses, and going in and, wolf in sheep's, what they call the wolf in sheep's clothes is what he was. Yeah. And, but here's something about that. In life, time will either promote you or time will expose you. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
So people always wonder what's going to happen in life. Time will either promote you or time will expose you. It's just a matter of time. He got exposed. And that's why I look at my life. Like, I'm obsessed right now with health, fitness, and nutrition, because 4 years ago, I got exposed in my own life of being fat and overweight and statistically obese. And I had a massive gut on me. I was, my cheeks, everything was fat on me. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm getting towards 50 years of age, and I'm freaking out of shape and out of breath and fat. And I'm addicted to sugar. I mean, when I was going to McDonald's, I was eating 9 filet of fish, a large strawberry milkshake, and a large French fry was a typical lunch meal for me. 9 filet of fish. I'd walk into McDonald's, Dairy Queen, Burger King, and they knew me on a first name basis. and I realized that this has got to change. Yeah. I don't want to be known on a first name basis in these places. So I had to change things about my life. And I wasn't proud of that, but I had to realize, oh my gosh, I'm a sugar addict. I'm addicted to sugar, going to McDonald's and going to 7-Eleven and getting the super big gulps and drinking those things while I'm on the road all the time, because I'm traveling 276 days a year.
Yeah, that makes
I got to maintain high performance energy.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to the gym.
So tell me the difference, and this isn't a fair question. I'm going to preface it with that, because I don't have enough information to make this a fair question. But what's the difference between when you had cease and desist orders, you owed a bunch of money, you were waiting for that $5,000 50% check from the oil and gas company to go out and pay off some of your debts, and this other guy that you hired kind of in that same situation?
Yeah. So integrity. Without integrity, nothing works. Our words create our world. And so in my early days, I had no integrity. And then I had selective integrity based on what I could get from other people. Yeah. There's always an agenda or a hidden agenda in my life. And I was a great liar, BSer, liar, all that stuff. And when I realized that I had to stop lying to myself and I had to stop exaggerating things and embellishing things, that was a defining moment when my income changed, my network changed, everything around me, the people, the places, the opportunities, the seats at the tables, all changed years ago. When, number one, I stopped lying to myself by my own BS, right? And the thing was exaggerating, embellishing things just to get a sale, just to close a deal, because I was coming from such fear and lack in scarcity and survival, living panic to panic, do whatever I could just to close a deal. So I would exaggerate things, I would embellish things just to get the money in the door because I was so freaking scared. And what happened was, big turning point was I was raising $50,000 one day, flat broke financially, didn't have any money, called up a buddy of mine. We played this game where when I had money, he'd borrow from me. When he had money, we played this game back and forth for a few years. Right? He's doing well, I'll borrow from him. And we just played back and forth, borrowing from each other. And it was stupid looking back on it, but it worked during the time. It was a strategy that we used. And I remember raising $50,000 for a company years ago. And I was going through a list of accredited investors across North America. And I came across this guy, and he's like, I'll take the meeting with you. I'll meet you. I'll come to you. I'll meet with you. Here's my office address. I'll give you 45 minutes for a meeting on the calendar. So I called a buddy of mine. I said, listen, I need money for travel expenses. Can you pay my airline ticket? Can you get my hotel? And so I arrived in there, and I'm staying at the Holiday Inn Hotel because it's free continental breakfast the next morning. And the next morning I get up, and I realize, oh my gosh, I got to get to this guy's office, but I don't have money for a taxi cab. Uber wasn't around at the time. And I didn't, and there was no public transit where I was because I was right by the airport. And because from the airport there, I took a shuttle bus. It was free. And I had continental breakfast. So what I do, I call up the guy, the investor, and I lie on the phone. I call him from the hotel room, and I call up. I said, listen, you know what? Traffic is crazy right now. It's rush hour traffic here in Winnipeg. And I need you to come. I need you to come to the hotel and come see me. And he's like, well, I thought you were going to come to me. I says, okay, fine. So he drives, and I said to him, I'm going to buy you breakfast at the hotel. Complete lie. He comes to the hotel, walks in the hotel, and there's signs all over for registered hotel guests only. I sit him down. I said, what would you like to have for breakfast? He goes, well, I'm fine. I ate a few hours ago. So I realized I got 45 minutes. The clock is ticking. I lunge into pitching and selling this guy, Trevor, like aggressively, like it's like a timeshare presentation. About 90 seconds into it, he says, Darren, would you shut up for a minute? You just stop talking. I'm going to walk out the door. He goes, let's just get something straight. Number one is I'm not going to write a check for $50,000 a day. So you're not getting a check from me. Number one. Number two is you need to learn something because I see my younger self in you. You need to realize that when you're dealing with high net worth and ultra high net worth and accredited investors, to stop pitching and selling and start to listen and ask questions and educate and inform. You never asked me anything about me, what I invest in, what my risk tolerance level is, what my portfolio is, do I have children, am I married, do I have a spouse, my background. You knew nothing about me, which is transactional versus relational. He goes, stop pitching and selling and start educating and informing and watch how your life will change. I need to go. And he walked up and he left. Yeah. And that was just like a punch in the face for me, Trevor. But I realized I need to stop pitching and selling and start listening and asking questions and educating and informing. Because I had commission breath. I was always out for the check. I was out for it was always transactional. Whereas now in my life, what's really changed, I'm a relational person. I'm not about transaction, I'm about relationship, building relationship equity. People get to know me, like me, and trust me with high levels of integrity. So my word is my world. In fact, I'm in a course right now, an integrity training course. I've signed up. I pay money to take training courses on integrity. I have an integrity coach.
I was going to ask what that pivot point was, because you were talking about how you used to be. I challenged you on the person that the bad actor that took you for $400,000, and kind of comparing the younger you to the integrity piece. I appreciate your openness to share that. But it really was an instant in time. It was this meeting that you realized I got exposed. I need to act differently because I'm not just lying to the people around me. I'm believing my own bullshit. Right. And
I'm selling this fake thing. That's why I see on social media, all these fake people. I was a fake person in my 20s, early 30s. I was this fake guy running around pretending I was this big show. Where really I was flat broke, not knowing where the next dollar was going to come from, living panic to panic. Yeah. But I was just selling the dream, selling the rah, selling the dream, drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah. And that was the fantasy thing, was that all these goals and dreams, like I've got over 7,000 written goals, and my friends who've known me for 30, 40 years, they see me during, it's hard to believe. You have all these goals written down, all these vision boards over the years. Now you're 50s, they've come true.
Right.
We thought you were crazy, man. Yeah. Like we thought you were just crazy. But they came true. Like everything I said, I was going to go to NASDAQ. I've been to NASDAQ 3 times during the closing bell. Gonna be a millionaire. Become a millionaire. You get, have a book that would go global all over the world. All these different things I want to do. Train all these companies, travel all these places, meet all these different people. They came true. And some things in the past, I realized that it wasn't the best because it wasn't the best for my, integrity. But I realized how much I've changed my life now with that.
Yeah. Tell me now where you're at, like the companies that you have, how you make the decisions to invest in. You made the comment earlier about missed opportunity with some of the
Yeah.
equity positions and some of the opportunities that you had. How do you make those decisions now? What does your portfolio look like, and
Sure.
how do you balance your day and your time
Yeah.
with with those expectations that are put on you?
So everything is made based on a team. So Tatiana and I are primary decision makers, and then we've got other people around us that we rely on, that we collaborate with in terms of decision-making process. There's always a discovery process and then due diligence. And I rely heavily on women's intuition that work with me, ladies who work with me. And we have a 3-step process. Your intuition, number one, is either calm, it's cautious, or it's nervous. So if we're looking at an investment opportunity, I'll ask them through WhatsApp or through a text message, if we're in person, or if we're, you know what I mean? Are you, number one, are you calm, green light, cautious, yellow light, or red light, nervous? You're either calm, cautious, or you're nervous. And we'll take a vote on calm, cautious, or nervous. And if it's calm, we'll proceed forward. If it's cautious, we'll do more research, more due diligence, ask more questions, get accountants and lawyers involved, do reference check, hire a private investigator, whatever it takes. We'll do that. If it's nervous, we run away from it. Okay.
Right.
First thing. Another thing, what I do is I do a thing called micro commitments. I learned this from a billionaire friend of mine a number of years ago. He said, Darren, before you ever invest in someone's business, or you hire someone, or you do a joint venture, strategic alliance, or merger acquisition, you give people a series of micro commitments. So what they are is number one is I'll take people hiking. If they don't want to go for a hike, we'll go for a walk. But you're going outdoors with me. Because why? Behavior never lies. Behavior never lies. I want to do something practical with you because I want to see you sweat. I want to see you uncomfortable. So the first thing is, if I'm going to take you out into nature, the human brain's job is protection and survival. So the number one question, the first question your brain's going to ask yourself is, are we going to get eaten or attacked by a wild animal? Okay. So the first thing is, I'm going to take you on a hiking trail, and we're going to go maybe at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we'll go when it's dark. Sometimes we're going to go when it's pouring rain or it's snowing out, because I want you to be uncomfortable. I want to see, how do you handle adversity? How do you handle setbacks? How do you handle things when you don't feel comfortable? You tell me you're this great person. You tell me you're doing all these things. You've got an impressive resume. You tell me you're going to build a big multi-million-dollar company as a CEO, and you're unstoppable and you're bulletproof and you can withstand anything. Great. Let's take you out hiking and see what you do with adversities and challenges and bad weather and wild animals potentially. And because your behavior won't lie, it's going to be on the loudspeaker. So what I do is I take you out and I'll say, hey, Trevor, as I'm hiking you for a couple hours, do you like to read books? Great. What kind of books do you like to read? Oh, you say, well, I like to listen to podcasts or audiobooks. Say, great. Listen, if I sent you an audiobook, by when, so it's by when, specific, measurable, and actionable. So there's an accountability. By when could you listen to it by? Like, now you're just using your words. Now you're throwing your words out, because words create worlds. So here's the thing. What I'm doing is a micro commitment, a micro test, because I'm doing an integrity test. What I want to see is, number one is, do you honor your word? Because I never used to. My words didn't mean anything. In fact, we hear a lot of times in the business world that talk is cheap. I think most people cheapen their talk because their words have no power. Their words have no power. Our words create our world. So I'll say, hey, listen, by when could you listen to this audio? And you'll say, you know what? By Friday. Great. By what time? What do you mean what time? Give me a time. Morning, afternoon, evening. Give me a specific time. By 7 p.m. Great. Pacific Standard Time Zone. Great. I have a request for you, Trevor. Would you send me a text message to my cell phone when you have listened to the audiobook and send it to me with 3 things you learned from it? Oh, yeah, I'll get it done. Okay, great. So then I'll write it down at the end of the hike as an action item, as a next step action item. It's part of the interview process, part of the discovery due diligence. And then I'll set an alarm and a reminder in my calendar for Friday at 7 p.m. as an action item that he has as a deliverable to me. And if he doesn't follow through, failed micro commitment. And I'll do a series of these micro commitments. And so some of our investments in our portfolio, we're involved in the salad dressing business. I've got a lot of real estate, single family homes. We have a company called Smashing Numbers, which is bookkeeping and accounting. We're building an international bookkeeping and accounting firm right now. And our plans to grow up to a $50 million company, then exit with that. So we're involved in a portable food truck that we have. We've got artificial intelligence, cybersecurity we're involved in, as well as investments and various different real estate companies as well that are involved in lots of different real estate. And so what I do is we use hiking as a filter to do micro commitments. Number one is people like, so I'll give you an example. I had a number of, like, I get lots of people every week wanting to get on my calendar to pick my brain, ask me questions, go for breakfast, go for lunches, go for dinners, go for coffees. So what I do is whenever I'm traveling, I invite them all to come with me. So like just recently in Vancouver, back home, I had 16 people show up at a hike that I didn't even know any of the people. I've never met any of these people in person. They all showed up, wanted to meet me, and I was very transparent with them that, listen, you're not going to get one-on-one time with me exclusively. I've got people show up. I don't know how many, but I had 16 people show up for a 2-hour hike, and then I introduced them to each other, and I spent a couple of minutes with each person over the 2.5-hour hike that by the time we got back to the parking lot.
Right.
So it was cool that. But the fun thing is that what I do is when we're out hiking, I want you to go up a hill. I want you to sweat. I want you to like, oh my gosh, this is hard. This is challenging. It's hot or it's cold or it's rainy. And I want to see, how do you deal with, like, are you offering water to somebody? Did you bring the whistle? Do you have the proper footwear? Do you have a trip plan? Did you tell your spouse or your partner that you're going on a hike at 6:00 in the morning and you're going out in the wilderness? Did you tell your friends or family? Did you tell a couple people where you're going to go? Well, what happens if something happens to you? Like worst case scenario.
Counting on you, Darren.
Yeah. So I'm doing all this scenario planning, the best case, likely case, worst case scenario. So I'm asking all these questions. And then I find out in a 2-hour hike what books they read, what they listen to, how their relationship's going. Because here's the thing about hiking. When you take people out into nature, the authenticity and the vulnerability starts to show up in people.
Right.
Okay. We can go play golf or tennis or pickleball, and you can put on your game mask and be in your image and your ego. And man, things are just rock and rolling in your world and your life. But when you're on a hiking trail with me and you're catching your next breath, and I take you up and you see a sunrise or a sunset and you're a little vulnerable and emotional, or you're scared if we're going to see a wild animal, all these things start to play into the human mind and the human body and how you feel. And what happens is you start opening up, and we start peeling the layers of the onion of who you are as a human being. And I had many people, in fact, as part of discovery due diligence, I brought investor friends of mine, and we're like, let's take the person on a hike first. No, Darren, let's just go meet with them at the Fairmont Hotel and sit down and have a visit. No, we're going to go out hiking. And I've had friends of mine saying, oh my gosh, I was going to write a check for a significant amount of money, but I'm so glad you took him on a hike with me. Because, man, did I ever learn stuff that he was not going to tell me in that business meeting or in that boardroom or on that Zoom call. Because people get raw. It's hard to lie when you're on a hiking trail for a couple hours. People are open up, vulnerable, authentic.
And I could see them when they're, like their authentic self could even be the things that they're obviously trying to hide. Right. Correct. So if they're trying not to sweat, I don't know how you do that. Or they're trying not to breathe heavy, or they're trying not to, like, it's this inability to show weakness, or they don't want to show weakness, maybe not an inability, but a lack of desire to show weakness, which then changes their vulnerability and their, all of that. I can see it being a true measure. Yeah. Truly.
And the thing is that if you look at it, you learn a lot about people's character. Yeah. Right. Because they talk a good game. People talk a really good game. But then when it's practical, I should talk a good game. But man, if you would have taken me on a hiking trip 10 years ago, I wouldn't have made it up the hill. There's no chance. Yeah. I did Mount Kilimanjaro last year, and I went 19,340 feet because a guy challenged me, and I took 1 year to train myself. Yeah. Because my first hike just a few years ago, was a 45-minute hike. Took me 2 hours and 48 minutes to get to the top. Yeah. Round trip was 5.5 hours. And I was going to call 911 and have the fire department or search and rescue come pick me up because I was so out of shape and so out of breath. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, Trevor, how many people give their word, and I even send them a counter invitation with an all trails thing. They're like, oh yeah, I'll show up there. And they don't even follow through and keep their word. And they don't even restore their integrity by sending me a text message or a phone call or email. They say, look, I'm sorry I didn't come up. They just disappear. Yeah. It's amazing how many people, when they're raising money for a startup company, when you say, okay, yeah, great, I'd love to meet with you. Okay, great. Yeah. We're going to go hiking. Okay, when? This place, this time. Oh, really? Yeah, at 6:30 in the morning. Okay, we'll go at 2:00 in the afternoon. We'll go at 7:00 in the evening. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll be there. And they don't show up, and you never hear from me. I've had people even reach out to me and say, hey, look, a couple weeks later, sorry, I never get a chance to meet up with you. Listen, our round is closing. Can you send the money in?
Right.
I'm like, no, you didn't meet the discovery and the due diligence process here.
Yeah. It was a test after all.
Absolutely. You failed the micro commitment was to see if you're going to show up on time. I'll give you a quick example. There's a company I invested in here just a few months ago. Ted and I invested in this company. Met the guy about a year ago through a hiking group in Vancouver. And this guy started showing up. And I thought, man, this guy's great. I love what this guy's business model is. I love his company. So I said to him one day, I said, listen, you know what? I'd love to get together with you and I, but listen, I've got a really busy schedule. I can only meet at 5 a.m. in the morning. It was in November, pouring rain in Vancouver, pitch black out. We met in West Vancouver at the Heliport White Lake Trail. I said, I can only meet you at 5 o'clock in the morning for a 2-hour hike. Can you be there at this time? So at 4:25 in the morning, I rolled into the parking lot. It's pitch black, pouring rain outside in Vancouver. At 4:30, he arrives 5 minutes after me. We're not supposed to meet till 5 a.m. This guy drove 1 hour from the Lower Mainland to West Vancouver to meet me. He was probably up at 2:30, 3 o'clock to get there. He was 30 minutes early. When he got out of the vehicle, it's pouring rain, it's pitch black. He's got his light on. He goes, "Good morning, how are you? I'm ready to go." I thought, this is a guy I'm going to invest in because he's got energy.
Yeah.
At 3:30 in the early in the morning, getting up and meeting me at 4:30 in the morning, and he's got this kind of vitality and energy. I want to invest in that. This guy's bankable, and it's been a huge investment. We helped grow and scale this guy's business today. We're grateful to be in business with him.
That's really, really cool. I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the SIR. Tell me just the quick story behind that and what that experience was like.
So I've had a chance, been very blessed and grateful to travel this world multiple times all over the world, many, many countries, and meet a lot of people from all walks of life. And I've been to a lot of fundraising events, charity events, conferences, and conventions. And I meet people from all walks of life. And I've been grateful to be in the room with a lot of different people who are royalties and celebrity members from all over the world over the years. And I get a chance through a network of conversations to meet and greet people. And one thing I always share with people is never assume you aren't being observed. Never assume you're not being observed. We're always being watched. We're always being observed. So in January 2022, I was nominated by 2 people through the Royal Order of Cappadocia in Spain, through the Royal Order, to be knighted as Sir Darren Jacklin. So I received a phone call in January of 2022 during COVID, and they said that you have been candidated to go through an interview discovery process for about 4 to 6 months to see if you qualify to be part of the Royal Order. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, it's one of these, because I got asked like 10 years ago, hey, do you want to be on stage with Sir Richard Branson? I'm like, would love to. Like, you're right, $75,000 to be a title sponsor. Well, usually the title sponsor, you get a seat on a panel with Sir Richard Branson. Can't guarantee you're going to meet him.
Yeah.
But when you're getting mic'd up with them, you might have 90 seconds before you go on stage. But it's $75,000. So I thought it was one of those kind of deals.
Yeah.
So anyways, I went through the interview process. There was over 400 people globally that were nominated in several countries. And of the 400 plus people, they chose 24 people, 15 men and 9 women. There's 8 different categories that they've ranked, kind of like a Nobel Peace Prize. They have 8 different categories. And I was chosen under the global philanthropy, and I was chosen under entrepreneurship for what I'd overcome in my adversities, my challenges, my setbacks, with my backstory to my come-up story to my success story. And they thought I would be great as an ambassador to the world as a Sir Darren Jacklin for the next generation. So I became knighted through the Royal Order of Cappadocia, ROC, out of Spain, His Royal Highness out of Spain. And when I got knighted in June of 2022, I made 2 public declarations to the world. Number 1 is to be a global ambassador for mental health awareness, because I know lots of people have committed suicide to mental health. I was one of those guys who did multiple suicide attempts in my late 20s, or my late teens, early 20s. And this year alone, I've lost 3 close friends, male friends, to suicide. And I just saw some data here recently that 58,000 men globally a month commit suicide around the world for various different reasons, primarily related to mental health. So number 1 is mental health awareness. Number 2 was through Link Foundation, which is the international foundation that Tete and I created, that I was to be accountable, responsible, and committed to building 100 schools with a team over the next decade around the world, and that we would create an international movement for mental health to have people take a hike and build a school at hikingfundraiser.com. So we have people go to hikingfundraiser.com, and we're starting to build a global movement over the next few years as we grow and scale. Well, people will come out, they'll take a hike, they'll network, collaborate, they'll meet me and other very inspiring people and create aliveness in their lives. And through that, the money we raise from collecting from hiking registration, corporate sponsorship and merchandise sales gets collected to build one of our schools, a part of the 100 schools around the world. So it's from my adversity of being fat and overweight over the last few years of transforming my life and just getting in the gym and working out and hiking almost every day of my life now. Now I've created a global movement that will be part of building 100 schools around the world to help alleviate poverty, provide access to clean drinking water, food security, and education for the next generation of children on this planet.
Very, very cool, Darren. Is so inspirational, and all of your stories leave so many opportunities for lessons for not just aspiring business owners and entrepreneurs, but people who are there, people who are in it in the trenches today. And I can't thank you enough for the time that you've spent with me, and
grateful to be here.
The opportunity for me to share your stories with another audience. So
my pleasure,
thank you
Trevor.
so much for taking the time, Sir Darren Jacklin, and I really appreciate you being here.
Grateful to be here.
Thanks so much.